some questions, there was some input I think that the board had received from town departments, and this matter was continued to this meeting, and since that time, we have had, I think, a very good meeting with staff. 3 of the staff members are here, as well as with the town manager on June 25th with regard to requirements that the town would like to see in place for the protection of the sidewalk and the pedestrians during the course of construction along the facade of the building. And I received a letter prior to that meeting from the town manager outlining various conditions for the approval recommendations from staff with regard to the type of construction. During the course of our meeting, we went through each of these. The applicant has no objection to any of these requirements from staff. The difference between what staff is looking for and what we have certainly agreed to provide and what was initially presented to you was the initial presentation was for simply staging and screening along the front of the building that would provide some protection during the course of construction and screening of the facade, and it only came into the sidewalk 2 feet. Then we were looking for a 2-foot width. What the staff has recommended, and I discussed with the building inspector, was staging or scaffolding, essentially, that crosses over the entire sidewalk, so that and it has a cover on it, so that it will provide protection for pedestrians from anything that might fall. And that's perfectly acceptable to the applicant. There was a request that we discussed when town council was here at the last meeting with regard to an insurance binder language. A 1 million, 3 million binder is acceptable. Certainly, that's fine and not unusual. And we're in agreement with all of these various items. If you would like me to go through these individually, I will. Otherwise, I assume that you have this letter.
Which items are you referring to?
The items in the letter that I received from the town manager dated June 24th. Do you have that?
We have June 25th.
It's June 25th.
I think there was one addition that came out of the meeting that was a clarification on number 9 and the insurance, which was fine.
So just for the public record, either you can read them or I can read them.
I'm happy to read them.
Please.
Okay, item number 1, any scaffolding erected within the public right-of-way to bridge the...
I'm sorry, those are fine. It was the other items that you referred to, A through F.
You'd like me to go through A through F?
Thank you.
Certainly. And we discussed these and answered these during the course of our meeting, but item A, will the current businesses be open during construction? And if so, what provisions for access are being made? The businesses will not be open during construction. Will there be any and all dumpsters and debris chutes to be located during construction? And yes, there will be, and they will be located at the rear of the building. Item number C, upon completion, will the business entrances be accessible per the building code? And the answer is yes. Item D, fire lane access to the rear of the building must be maintained at all times. Yes. Item E, upon erection of the scaffolding, an accessible route must be maintained. This may require a police detail and/or the installation of temporary ramps to allow pedestrian safe and accessible passage along Maple Street. The cost of this is to be borne by the applicant. Yes. Will there be a crane on site, and if so, where will it be located during operations and overnight? Yes, there will be a crane for a portion of the construction time, and it will be located at the rear of the property.
Thank you. Anything else you want to add?
I don't think so.
Okay. We will go to questions from members of the board. David?
No questions, thank you.
All right, Diane?
So, thank you for doing this. As I said, this is great because we will be doing the overlay, and to me, I hope the staff continues to look at this because it would be a lot nicer as we move forward, to not have to have 2 meetings for this. So hopefully, you were our guinea pig, as I kept telling you, and we're working out some kinks, and thank you for being a part of that. I really like the scaffolding going across. As I said at the first meeting in New York, you always walk under it. It made no sense to me, but I was going by the, whatever the building inspector said, that's his job, and I was going to accept that. But I want to thank you for deciding that we want it completely across. I think it's the right thing to do. So hopefully our 3 wonderful staff people here will watch as this goes on, make a recommendation to this letter if you see something you think we need tweaks, so we don't have 2 meetings for every permit that could be pulled in the next year. Anything, your input's great. It's only for the safety of the residents, so I really appreciate the extra time you put into, so thank you. And Gary says hi.
Thank you, Diane. Bill?
No questions, thank you very much.
Gardner?
Thank you. So I do have a couple of questions, most of which you heard before. I just want to make sure because there were changes in the conditions, that what we heard last time is still acceptable, and a couple of questions in there. One is, it's changed from 2 foot to the width of the sidewalk. I'd ask the town, is there exact measurements? Here's my concern. If we do the width of that from the base of the building to the curb is 15 feet. And I'm concerned that someone who parks along the side of on the street can't open their doors. So is it actually all the way to the curbing, or is there a setback? I'm trying to understand.
What we're trying to do is eliminate some of the...
Rich, you're going to have to go up there if you're going to speak. We need to address the folks at home as well.
Okay, what we're trying to do is eliminate somebody walking around the scaffolding and still be subject to something falling off the building. So your typical staging frames are 7x7 on adjustable legs. You get them high enough so you can walk underneath it. So we want everybody walking on that sidewalk to go underneath the cover,
Okay.
the protective cover. So we can leave a little room at the curb, enough for a door to swing, but we're trying to eliminate pedestrians working their way around the staging.
Okay. And in the document here, I understand that it was a discussion, a collaboration, and it's gone from 8 months to 9 months here. My preference again would be back to 8 months if at all possible. I'm not gonna push that too hard. But in item 5 and item 6, we talk about adequate notice to the town in time for the selectmen to be able to vote and on any requested extensions. My concern in the 30-day number is that we have a summer schedule, or it happens right the day after our first meeting, and the clock starts, that you submit an application to extend it because whatever happens. We may only have 1 meeting in that time frame, and I would want the ability to have a meeting, ask questions, and then come back. So I'd ask it to be 40, I'd ask for those 30 days to be 45 days.
Or prior to the next 2 selectmen's meetings or something like that.
I thought about that, I talked about it to the town manager. The
Yeah.
problem is in the summer schedule, they aren't scheduled that way.
Right, so that,
So if we gave it 45 days, then I think that we would have enough time to fit in two meetings, giving enough time to hear, ask any questions, and still be able to respond in a manner that didn't cramp everybody. So I'll be, I don't know what your feelings are, but I'll be asking for 45 days.
45 days is fine.
Okay. We did talk about protective screening at the ground level so people can't climb. Is that still the intent?
Yes.
Great, perfect. All right. And I know it's not in this document, but we did talk about adequate signage with contractor contact information, and I'd want that to be 24/7.
Yeah, it's standard.
Okay, that's standard, okay, thank you. We did talk about, and you assured us there'd be no parking of construction equipment or employee equipment on the street. And my presumption is you're gonna need at least a couple of days to erect the scaffolding potentially and take it down, and I understand that. But in the event that you need more, I wanted to basically say if you need to consume parking spaces downtown, I would like to see, and I've talked to the town manager about this potential, the opportunity to say that if you needed to, with the approval of the appropriate departments, that consuming a spot does take away from, the other businesses and the other consumers. So I'd recommend $100 per spot per day if you needed it, other than a couple of days to erect and a couple of days to tear down the scaffolding.
Is that a requirement that's put on other construction that
So-
goes on in the downtown?
So I think what we're doing, and as Diane said, we're trying to determine, we expect that there's going to be more construction based on overlay zoning changes and so on and so forth. And I think what we're trying to do is establish a norm. I'm concerned that, and, if you need it for a crane to lift an air conditioning unit up or something like that, I understand that, I get it. But I also am concerned about consuming parking spots in front of the building for any extended period of time. And I'm not suggesting you would, I'm suggesting I'm looking at what I think we might want to have as a standard.
May I address that? Thank you. So I think we're, again, overstepping the scope of what we're doing. I agree that this is a great, and I think that we had 3 of our most prominent staff work in this, and again, I would wish that they would come back to us. We have Coca-Cola blocking off 4 spots out there. We have, the is it JRM? I don't really try to pay much attention to them, but we have the trash blocking off. We constantly, and I would never want our downtown businesses to not be able to get delivery and what have you. So I think that's something that, again, I would rather have addressed, if it's a concern of yours going forward as we do the overlay of how that best could be worded. But I don't think I want to put it in here. If they become a nuisance, we have police. We have the building inspector, that I would rather say,
Yeah, so I'm not talking about deliveries, and I'm not trying to slow those down. And I would disagree with the statement that we don't have the authority. We have the authority for private use of public property, and parking spots are. And if you want to address that as part of the overlay discussion, I don't mind doing that for future applicants. I'm just saying, I think that it has to be addressed, that if there's construction equipment on the streets for some concerted amount of time, a day, 2 days, a week, whatever it is, that consuming those spots should be something that's addressed.
Yeah, and they should take that note for when, again, this is a great document that we have, that we hopefully will stop 2 meetings, and certainly don't want 3.
I'm not looking to extend it.
But I mean, it's something that I think that they should look at, I agree, but I would want them to sit down, talk about it, make good decisions based on their professional knowledge, and not something we're just going to add to a list at this point.
No.
Mr. Chairman, if I might address that same issue also. We have precedent in town for many, many years where the Danvers Family Festival comes in and takes 8 or 9 spots all day long. I don't want to assess them $800 to $1,000 for the use of the spaces in front of CVS or Santander Bank. I don't want to establish a precedent in this case of charging for an individual spot if it's going to be used subordinate for the construction of the building. If it's going to be done in the future, it's all well and good to talk about it, but I don't think this is the appropriate time because of prior use of public space in the square by non-governmental agencies or entities for various activities. And I'll use the Family Festival as an example because, God, and you're very aware of that, and you know how many spaces they take for that. And I've never had any organization come to us and ask us as selectmen to use those spaces during Family Festival in the 14 years that I've been a selectman.
No, that's because this town manager has the authority to grant that.
I don't need a lesson, okay?
Well, I'm telling you that.
I'm making a
I think it's
point.
fair question.
Nick,
Yep.
do you have any other points?
Yep, I do. I know we discussed no disposal before 7, but I'd like to make sure that we're still in agreement there's no deliveries before 7 o'clock as well of construction equipment, of construction supplies, or I'm concerned about, and we've heard not from obviously this applicant, but we've heard in the past, trucks start idling at 6 in the morning, or the backup beepers of deliveries before 7 is a nuisance to the residents. So if we're comfortable with no deliveries before 7, as well as disposal on.
Our planning board certificate of action has hours of construction, which would include deliveries,
Okay,
and very specifically stated.
all right. I think that's it. So I just wanted to
Would
make
you
sure we hit those.
recap what it is you are asking for specifically?
Specifically, 45 days in items number 5 and 6, which we heard is fine. Protective screens to prevent climbing, which, again, agreed upon. Adequate signage for contractors and contacting them 24/7. And no deliveries before 7, which is part of their agreement anyhow.
Those 4 items?
Yep.
Thank you. What is the plan for a start date on the scaffolding and the work?
The plan is after we're permitted, so I believe that's around,
Mid-September.
yeah, mid-September.
Mid-September, you'll probably be starting, you'll have all your permits?
Correct.
Latest, maybe the 1st of October?
Yeah.
And when would the scaffolding come down?
So it's to be erected at the beginning of the project.
Right.
And then be maintained for at least, or not at least 8 months, but a maximum of the 8 or 9 months. That
The
we-
scaffolding will
9
be out
months.
that full 9 months?
It might not. It doesn't have to be. It depends on the progress that we make, but the 9 months allows us some leeway without having to reapply, but we're gonna take it down as soon as we're ready to.
So, given weather, once you open it up, won't you try to close the building so you can
As
work
fast as we
inside
can.
as fast as you can?
Absolutely.
So, like, again, how long do you foresee that scaffolding? I mean,
It's, I mean, again, it's, I don't want to put a date on it to get held to that, you know? We'll take it down at the soonest available moment we can, which could be, you know, a few months into the project, but we need that leeway of the 9 months in case
so,
for some reason.
if
we
I
had-
may, I'm gonna, in a motion, defer to the building inspector. When he feels that it should come down, he'll make that, bring that to your attention.
Sure,
Is that all right?
yeah,
Just so, I don't want it sitting there for 9 months if it's not needed.
we're paying for
I
it
don't
to
want
be
it
there.
taken
We know
down
there. Yeah,
before you should,
right,
but we just want to know that it's going to be gone in
sure,
a timely manner. Is that agreeable?
yeah, yep.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the members of the board?
One other thing that I want just to open for discussion, which is, we did talk about insurance, and we also talked about performance bonds. Just to, you know, to make sure that everything's done in a manner consistent with what the town departments want. I want to know what we've had other construction projects where we've had to invoke a performance bond. And I'm, again, not talking about this, specifically about this applicant, but about setting precedent, because if we go ahead and don't now with this kind of project, then do we forego that on others? So I want to know what board members were
Well, I believe a
feeling.
performance bond, the amount of $25,000 will be furnished to the town prior to the erection of the scaffolding.
I'm not sure what you're reading.
Yeah, can I address that?
Yes, please.
So this question was raised, it was discussed at the last meeting, and we at the staff level discussed the fact that when permits are pulled to do utility work, there will be separate performance bonds associated with that work. The performance bond, I think in question right now, would be any damages that may occur to assets located within the right-of-way, for example, sidewalk, trash cans, curbing. There really isn't a lot. You know, I had a conversation with the town engineer. In theory, if every square foot of sidewalk within this 65-foot area were destroyed, it would be around a $33,000 replacement cost based on current costs. So I got the sense at the last meeting that a modest bond in that amount wouldn't be objectionable. And I think that's, what you're looking at, Dan, was a marked-up version based on the comments I received. So the rest of the board has the letter that was prepared, and I did prepare that sentence for you, Dan, in the event that that's something the board wanted to discuss tonight. So-
Which Gardner brought it up. So is 25,000 agreeable on both sides in the board?
We did not discuss that
We did
during our
not
meeting.
discuss, we discussed in performance bonds sort of broadly in terms of, you know, why we have substantial bonds for infrastructure projects where we need that asset to be functioning the way it's designed at the end. In this case, it's a private property, so we would never be looking at a bond that was a % of the project or something like that.
Right.
But I think the concern was something falls off the roof and smashes a section of sidewalk, the bond, we expect you're going to want to fix it yourself for a lot less than we would do it. but the bond gives some assurances that when you guys leave, that the sidewalk and the, you know, appurtenances would be in good working condition. And I think that's the sort of the principle here that was discussed.
5,000 sound reasonable to
You want to add that to your list?
Yes, please. Thank you. If that's the will of the board, yes.
Yeah, just
I
add it
didn't
to your
have
list.
that one.
Yeah, we'll,
Okay.
just add that to your list. I assume you're going to make a motion.
Sure.
you. Is there anything else in that letter that I didn't see?
The one other word I can, after our meeting, the other comment was on item 3, where we talk about removing the snow that's beneath, potentially beneath. I think we'd also suggest on the outside of the scaffolding, if you're doing the snow removal around the scaffolding, that it'd be all the way around the scaffolding and not just underneath the scaffolding. So the word alongside was added to number 3 for discussion purposes tonight.
That's not a problem.
Yeah. Other than that, it's the same.
Wait a minute, so you added to number 3, I don't have that.
I don't have
Yeah.
that.
The
So
word
if I
what was
can-
added was alongside
Oh,
as well.
Use your pen. I don't have that.
If I could clarify the reason there are different, the board received the letter that was discussed at the staff level and with the applicant. Subsequent to that, I received questions from some of the selectmen, and in anticipation of motions being made, I prepared that language and wanted the chair to have that language tonight. So I was anticipating amendments, and I think those would need to be voted in order for them to end up in the final version. And I'm happy to read the two sort of as written, if you'd like to hear them.
May I just ask a question
Sure.
on that? So downtown, when they plow, if it's a really good storm, it piles up a good 4 or 5 feet sometimes on the outside, on the street, maybe 4 feet out, 3 feet out, half the parking spot. So for the length of the scaffolding, are you asking them to clear those parking spots?
No.
Or just the sidewalk portion?
I think we don't want to be operating around the base of their scaffolding and damage it and then be responsible for it. So
Okay,
the
so-
question would be, if they're going to be doing snow clearing in the vicinity of their scaffolding, they should be going all the way around that scaffolding and not just underneath the
On
scaffolding.
top of the sidewalk only?
Correct.
Up to the
Not in the
end of the
street.
curb?
Correct.
Don't have to touch the street?
No.
Just want to make sure, because everybody would want the scaffolding in front of their business. You might have a problem, they'll want it extended. But I just want to make sure, because that is something that, I think that's fine, that would just be the sidewalk, so I don't think that's a big deal. Okay, and then, just so you know, when you make the motion, if you add in the 7 AM, I will not be in agreement with that, it's already in our bylaw. So I don't want to start duplicating stuff that's already in our if
So
I
just
know
if
it's in
can
the
correct you,
bylaw.
there's no bylaw for deliveries. They have a,
Oh,
it's
I'd
pickup.
want to hear that, because I watch them out in front of my house. They sit there till 7 before they unload fences and everything else. I watched that with the high school. They couldn't do anything until 7, so I'd like that clarified as to whether deliveries
Well, it's a
of-
separate bylaw
of-
if it is.
construction materials can be made before 7.
I believe it sounds like it was already included in the planning board approval as well, so
So-
the
So
provision's
I'm
already
going
in
to
place.
forego that.
So the wording's already there. So I don't want to duplicate.
No, I'm not going to.
Okay.
Any other questions from members of the board, comments?
So the only thing that changed was 3. Did you say there was a second thing that changed? But now this bond.
If there's a,
So, if I may, number 4, we clarified it's only 44, because in number 4 it says 44 and 50.
Okay, so that's
That's a
being changed to
clarification.
44. You should get a pen that works, if I'm going to borrow it. And then the other one was, now you're adding a bond, right?
Performance bond in the amount of $25,000 shall be furnished to the town prior to the erection of the scaffolding. And again, 50 Maple comes out, and that's in number 8.
So I guess I don't have a problem with that, but I would like to ask our 3 staff people that, again, when we're looking at this for downtown, instead of this coming in front of us, there should be a condition at the planning board that, right? Can't we just make it a condition there? Because we're going to have a lot going on downtown, and I really think duplication is awful. So is that something we can do at the planning board level? Or does it have to be here?
I think over the public way, it's the
Rich,
Right.
I'm sorry.
its jurisdiction.
So as I noted, I think when they're ready to do their water and sewer tie-ins to our system, Steve King's department is going to be requiring performance bonds as part of that work related to that. What we're talking about is, in my opinion, a highly unlikely event where damage may occur to assets as a function of this narrow scope, which is the working with the scaffolding. So a trash can being demolished in the process of putting up the scaffolding, something falling off the roof and smashing a section of sidewalk. I think I'd go so far as to say it's probably 0% probability that the applicant would have us drawing off the bond to do that work ourselves. I think that they would be making the repairs and leaving it the way they found it, but this is an assurance that that would happen.
So that's not covered in 8. Here's your 50 again, too, by the way.
I think what it would do in 8, if I may, is, number 8 says that when they leave, things have to be in good condition, and this would have a bond on hand to make sure that that's what happens. In the event that it doesn't, we have the ability to draw off that bond if we wanted to do some sidewalk repairs. But again, I think that's,
And I am not in construction, so how much does a $25,000, what are we talking? Are we talking hundreds, thousands? Does anybody have any idea what are we talking?
To repair a sidewalk?
No, to get the bond.
No, for a bond. Do you have any idea what, like a 25,000? Do you, from dealing with the electric, know what these people are paying for these bonds? No. I mean, does anybody have an idea what we're asking?
like, this is an unusual ask. I mean, typically, again, if we're talking about, for example, if we're doing an $8 million library project, you may have a bond for 40% of the value of that building, and you may be, I mean, I'm kind of different. I don't know if you have a guess, Rich, but it's in the thousands of dollars to hold a bond like that. But this is I mean, I think
So
in
we're
terms of
talking
performance
maybe
bond, this is on the small side, so
All right.
I wouldn't hazard a guess.
So it's probably in the hundreds, so,
I think it would be in the hundreds.
okay.
I think, I haven't seen the language that you have for your motion with regard to this, but it should specify that the performance bond is to secure that the sidewalk and the appurtenances associated with the sidewalk, meaning the furniture, what you have listed in item number 8,
Right.
are in good condition, that's what this bond is for.
So we're just
And-
adding to number 8 that there has to
Yep.
be a $25,000
I think that's
bond.
probably where it should go.
Okay.
and
That's where
that-
I would propose it, Nancy, is in number 8.
And that the bond is released once the scaffolding comes down.
Right.
And it's determined that there hasn't been any damage, which I would assume would be the building inspector. Perhaps you would have him make that determination.
Okay, Diane?
Yeah, and I just think I heard the building inspector say there'll be before and after pictures. Perfect. That protects everybody. Again, I'm thinking ahead here, sorry, I told you. Okay, that's good.
What's up?
Thank you.
Go ahead and all set.
I am.
Anybody else, any other questions? All right, Mr. Trask, you want to make a motion?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the application with respect to the conditions set forth in the June 25th letter from the town manager with the following modifications. We strike all references to 50 Maple Street. This is only for 44. That we add to Section 8 language that relates to a $25,000 performance bond, subject to cover the information in item 8 and released when the scaffolding comes down and the building inspector approves. That we modify number 5 and number 6 from 30 days to 45 days. That we add a condition that protective screening at the ground level be installed to prevent climbing on the scaffolding. That adequate signage for contractor contact information is maintained. And I believe
Snow removal along.
adequate snow removal to modify the
That's item 3.
number 3 to add the words along or alongside the erected scaffolding, not to include the street. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Questions? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none? Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
good
you
luck.
very much.
I think so. As Diane said, 3 of our most prominent employees are now free to go home.
Well,
Thank you, gentlemen.
Can you get in
coming.
9 holes before the?
I like getting real answers, so thank you for being here.
Thank
Don't
you.
say
Don't say anytime,
David,
Rich.
All right. Number 4, the board will vote to confirm Board of Selectmen assignments to various boards and committees for fiscal 2020. I didn't hear from anybody that they wanted some other responsibility or wanted to give up anything, so we drew up the list as last year. Now's your chance to speak up or not. Everybody's fine with their assignments?
Yeah, you have to change diversity committee name.
Yes, diversity committee name
Yeah.
needs to be changed, thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Well, because you've been messing it up
I'm
so
comfortable
much,
with
I
mine.
figured you needed a little help.
Inclusion.
Inclusion.
You keep saying that.
Ann won't be pleased, that's going to scrub her margins, but I'd already made a note, I'd already made a note that we need to address that, so.
All right.
And, Mr. Chairman, if I could, just because it's not on the agenda, but we got this calendar, and I just wanted to go through a few things
Yeah, I'll
on
get
this.
to that in a minute, thank you.
Okay.
At this time, looking at number 6, over the years, we've condensed all our business correspondence, et cetera, into one category. With the board's okay, I'd like to insert a new business for selectmen agenda item tonight and going forwards prior to the town manager giving his report. Sometimes the new business really should take precedent. The correspondence and updates is really us doing our PR work for Family Festival, Kiwanis, et cetera, and I'd like to pull new business out and keep it separate. And to that point, I have 2 items to talk about under new business. One of them is, and I think if you've been reading the papers recently, the city of Salem is adopting an idea, or trying to adopt an idea that's spreading throughout the rest of the country, and that's easing the restrictions on the in-law apartments in order to create affordable housing. I've always felt that our in-law or EFLA bylaw was too restrictive. The town manager and I talked about it, and we agree that perhaps we can ask the Affordable Housing Committee to look at our bylaw for EFLAs and maybe come back to the board with some recommendations or thoughts on how we can use EFLAs to create affordable housing going forwards. Gardner, would that be something that your board could look at?
Sure, we could make an initial stab at it, but obviously the planning board would have to be,
Well, we'd
the
like a
driver.
recommendation to come
Yep.
back from the affordable housing
Sure.
and then put it forwards to planning, et cetera.
Sure, we'll be happy to take that on
Okay.
as a charge.
All right, all right with the rest of the board?
I'm very much
I
in
think
favor of
it's
that, Dan. I think it's long overdue.
Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
but you know, just getting the EFLA through the first time,
Oh,
we
I
had
know
to
it.
put the restrictions on.
I
You're
know,
right.
and that's why I didn't fight it then, but,
I mean, it's way too restrictive.
Yes.
You're absolutely
right.
right.
We crawled, now we can walk.
Yep, so, but it is something that's spreading around. Some other cities are doing it, and it's a way to increase multifamilies, but affordable housing. So Gardner, if your board would undertake that responsibility, would appreciate that. The other new item, and it is the memo that Diane referred to, the fiscal calendar year. Before we go forwards with this document, I'd like to ask the board if they want to continue with the one-day budget hearing on Saturdays, or go back to what we did before. My thought is that while it's great to get it done in one day, I feel we rush through and maybe we're not as thorough as we should be, and we curtail the ability of the staff to make a complete presentation. I just want to know what the board feels about a one-day Saturday versus multi-nights.
I
To me,
like
it wasn't about doing it in one day because it's a time saver. I like it because it puts the budget in context. When you spread it overnight, we tend to focus on those 3 or 4 or 5 departments. So we focus on that evening without context of what all the other departments are doing, what their place is in the greater budget. As you know, I take the spreadsheet and I look and see, well, there's opportunities for savings if we bundle these 5 departments do the same exact thing and have the same exact expense, copier repairs, I'm making that up, but if that's the case, is it better to then, because I have the context of everybody, say, we should bundle the copier repair as in a manner that saves us money? Things of that nature. Not that I don't think we do, but it gives me a different view of the budget as a whole and each department's place in it than if we do it separately.
All right, so I'll put you down as in favor of a Saturdays. Bill?
I don't really care.
Diane?
I'm a one-dayer.
David?
I thought the one day was effective.
Okay, so it's three members like the one day, so we'll continue with the one day. Diane, you had comments about this document?
Yeah, and, okay, so first off, Tuesday, December 25th is a Wednesday. You have in here in March, the last day to file nomination papers. In February, you didn't put in when you can pull them. Don't ask me why, I'm bored now, see?
You must
I'm
be.
all done.
Say that one again, Diane, I'm sorry.
You put in when nomination papers are due in March, but you didn't pull the day to pull them, and I think it's in February.
Usually it's February 1st.
Yeah, so, I love this list, that's why I was going through it saying, this is fantastic, especially when if a new selectman came in, this is great to hand them. And then you put in a couple of places, during the week of, and we know that we might have a special town meeting, so would love to have when a possible or whatever, when you're thinking that will be, just really great in scheduling ahead of time. I think that was all. I didn't really go through all the days.
What was the first one you said in
The
December?
only reason I caught just Tuesday, December 25th, was you have Tuesday, December 24th, and I got confused.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But Tuesday, the 25th is a Wednesday. But, yeah, I would really love to, I love this. So I love all the things you put in. We pretty much do things ongoing, and it's kind of nice to look at this when you're planning stuff. And if you knew when you possibly the week of the special town meeting, that'd be great to know, too.
Yep, Ann actually created this, and what you just, there hasn't been turnover on this board, but it was created in part because we had a lot of new department heads and division managers coming on and weren't familiar with the calendar or the process. So this has been a great tool for them to keep track of what's coming when. And I agree, I think it turned into a pretty nice document.
Oh, it did, and also, you shouldn't have put that we're starting the budget, I didn't need to see that right away, that, it's like in 2 months, you're gonna start telling them they have to turn in the next budget. I was like, poor guys and girls.
So the town manager probably have Ann redo this, because I consider this just a draft. And make note that the one-day budget hearing will be March 15th.
Yeah,
Dan, would
but-
you say that again?
March 15th for the one-day budget hearing, not the 7th.
You probably mean the March 14th, because
Saturday, whatever that Saturday
Yeah.
is, right, the 14th. Thank you, Gardner.
I appreciate that we don't put all the boards and commissions on here, but do we want to consider putting school committee on here?
Oh,
Appropriate. Okay. Okay, Mr. Town Manager, anything to report to us?
I think we covered most of what we needed to cover tonight. You did get a copy of the press release that went out last week regarding the water and sewer rates. You received a copy of a letter from Applebee's tonight, and the chair and I had some correspondence regarding the timing and the dates on this. So the chair has signed a letter that will go out clarifying that in terms of the liquor license regulations, and I believe at some point later this year, they will be coming before the board to address the issue in terms of the restaurant closing, what the plans are, and what the board may decide to do in that regard.
and the proper way to apply for extensions, please, let's not go through that again.
So that, I think that's clarified in the letter, and I think that, the clerk at a future meeting can kind of elaborate on what if they are indeed closing without any plan to reopen, sort of what the process and the options are regarding that. And then last, I believe you received a copy of a memo from Ann dated July 2nd regarding town officers in your packets. This was a question that came up during the budget process. The question had to do with residents versus non-residents serving in these distinguished roles, staff versus non-staff. And the gist of it is that we can do just about anything we want. And the chair and I discussed the other day, there are a couple of positions here that actually do have some duties that, and they're called upon from time to time to execute those duties. Others are more sort of ceremonial in nature. But this was just in response to the questions that came up during the budget process.
And Bill, the reason that you don't have to go chase chickens anymore is because they don't leave us in the woods till noon anymore. That's why the high school kids aren't releasing them. Just saying. That was my favorite answer of them all.
We had a lot of animals that we chased down in the halls of Danvers High School, especially during senior week.
I loved that.
Anything else, Steve?
I grew up in an agricultural town, and I recall my sophomore year in high school, the seniors released a pretty hefty pig that they slathered in grease in the high school, and the custodial staff couldn't get a hold of it, so they were trying to cordon it off using pieces of rigid insulation to redirect it down the hallway they wanted it to go down to get out of the building. So
We had a pig at Danvers High School in '61, the classic, and back then we had glass milk bottles for lunch, and the girls sat on desks and the guys had to stand, and that pig went around and knocked over almost every table in the cafeteria. Glass was everywhere. David, you missed that going to the prep, because you guys had a little more class up there than we did at Danvers High.
They had polo horses.
All right.
that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Correspondence, selectmen's previous new business updates and PR. David?
Nothing, thank you, Dan.
Diane?
Just that I attended the water rate meeting, and I want to thank the water board, how thorough they were, and I want to thank David and town manager and Rodney, and I forget the gentleman's name that was there from the water, that was sitting next to me, but the professionalism, the questions that were asked, this wasn't an easy vote for them. I was totally impressed with them and was there to support them. We know how difficult sometimes it is to make a vote, but I'm really proud that the town, like I said, the town manager and Rodney were there so that they could understand the ongoings, as was the David and our building, whatever you want to call them, our electric accountant, really. So all hands were on. This wasn't something that was just voted through by them. They had a lot of questions, took them 2 meetings to get to it, and I think they did the right thing. So I just want to say I appreciate the work they did.
Thank you. Bill?
I just want to comment that I'm very, very pleased to see the list of promotions in the police department and the quality of the people we had that Steve was able to advance in rank. I'm very, very pleased with those people. There were a lot of dedicated members of the police department there. And I'm also happy to see our new fire piece of equipment be in service now. And I was given a nice tour of that truck by Captain Barry, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Gardner?
No new correspondence that everybody else didn't get, but I do, I'll do my PR. One is Family Festival is wrapped up. We want to thank all of the, not just the Family Festival Board of Directors, but also all the other social and civic groups that put on their own events that were advertised as part of Family Festival's 3-week period. Couple of rain dates happen, a couple of rain events, but that's going to happen in the summer. It was a good year, and we appreciate everybody's participation and everybody's volunteerism. We want to thank the town specifically for, they offer us a lot of in-kind support. They, the electric division or the street divisions put up a banner over the street, put up the banners on the light poles, clean up after Oldies Night. And so we appreciate all the effort that the town provides for us. DPW, fire, police, electric division, and I'm sure other divisions, and the health department comes and inspects the various vendors, and just town hall in general, so we want to thank them. The other thing I'll show for a little bit is the, because I helped in its inception, was the farmer's market has moved, in case people don't know that. They have combined forces with the concert series, and on Wednesday nights, down at the library, in the parking lot area of the library, the Rotary will continue its farmers market, encourage people to come down. The concert series itself has been augmented. We have food trucks on Wednesday nights now, as a new offering that we hope will take off. We do have, and this board approved the beer garden with True North on Wednesday nights. So come on down. The event, the concert series is every Monday and Wednesday night. If there's a rain date, it's the following day. So if it rains on Monday, it's going to be Tuesday, Wednesday to Thursday. Come on down. Last night, Shawna opened the series, and it's a lot of fun for free. The concerts run from 6 to 8. So looking forward to a fun concert series this year. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you go to the market, please consider buying a pot pie. The Friends of the Danvers Council on Aging is trying to raise funds to offset the $5,000 per month deficit in their transportation budget. So one of the fundraising ideas is to sell pot pies with the profits going to the senior center. So thank you there. And also tomorrow, 10 o'clock at the fire station, the fire marshal will be there to recognize the young man that helped save a woman's life on Hobart Street a few weeks ago. That's a nice honor for that young man. And as always, please remember the vets. If you see a vet, thank them. Current vets and past vets. Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Good night,
Second.
Danvers.
An hour, good.